Evening, ladies and gents, how are you doing? So, the dust has settled, well, since the last appalling act of savagery by people who have less in common with me than Abu Hamza. I am almost sick of being proved right as well, because I'm sure you all recall me saying many times over the last few years that it was only going to get worse and it was only going to keep on happening, because if the government refused to do anything about decades of swarthy foreign gentlemen folding up little girls above kebab shops, like literally the worst crime you can think of, worse than murder, isn't it? Torturing children. There's nothing worse than that. And I told you lot, when the British government proved that they were willing to be complicit in that type of behaviour, there was nothing that would make them act. I told you this, and I've been proved right, and I'll continue to be proved right, because it's going to happen again, and again, and again, and again. However, let's not just talk about how right I am all the time. Let's focus on the issue of today's video. The first thing I'm going to do is cover what's actually gone on in Southport in response to this awful crime. And then the second thing I'm going to do is cover the response from the politicians because, well, I tweeted this yesterday. Humza useless and Keir Starmer are angrier about the protests than the killers of children. Starmer also covered up the groomers. He is a treacherous dog and completely contemptible. That tweet was in response to Keir Starmer's, because the rhetoric of the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister has proved me 100% correct. They really are more concerned, and their language and their actions are more aggressive and more condemnatory about the response of normal white working class people to the children being butchered than they are about the people doing the killing. And this isn't a surprise to anyone who pays attention, right? Because it was the same after the Manchester Evening News Arena, where they literally blew up children at a pop concert. And the next day, they said, you know what the real kids getting blew up at pop concerts is pretty bad, but you know what's worse? Football hooligans saying they don't like it when that happens. Cheers, easy. So, I'll briefly cover the Southport riots. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, with Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper and all the rest of the slimy, slithering snakes that we call politicians, and their behaviour following a truly heinous act. And then I'll sum up with as much humour as I can muster, and probably a 10-hour rage boner. Don't worry, this is why the camera's at nipple height, because nobody wants to see that, do they? Okay, so two tweets I want to put alongside each other. Keir Starmer doesn't tweet very often, but when he does, well, it's to prove me right, isn't it? My tweet was in response to this one, but I'm going to show you them next to each other. Right, so this is his tweet from July 29th, shortly after the attack, alright? In which, as we all know, little girls got murdered by an oxygen thief of the highest order, a man whose every breath is an affront to common decency. Horrendous and deeply shocking news emerging from Southport. My thoughts are with all those affected. I would like to thank the police and the emergency services, and I'm being kept updated as the situation develops. The absolute state of that tweet. Read that. Just read it yourself. Slowly. Twice. It sounds like he's talking about a natural disaster. Like a tsunami's just flooded through Southport. Oh, it's horrendous and deeply shocking news. I've got to thank the police and the emergency services for helping, and I'm being kept updated. That sounds like a natural disaster. Sounds like a typhoon or an earthquake. Horrendous and shocking. Well done, emergency services. I'm being kept updated. Not a single word of condemnation. Not a tweet that I'd send something like, this is an appalling act of savagery, and when I find the bloke that did it, I will cut off his Jacobs and then personally lobby for the return of capital punishment so the fathers of the girls that lost their lives can watch as we drown him in a bathtub full of piss. That's what I'd tweet. That's what I'd tweet. I'd say I'm going to have a charity auction, and the winner of said auction gets to beat him with a big spiky vibrator until his head falls off. That's what I'd tweet, because we're talking about a contemptible monster. And he makes it sound like we're just discussing a big wave. Ooh, you know what them waves are like. I'm often surprised by the weakness and stupidity of our leaders, but that takes the cake. The only thing that could have surprised me more than when I saw that tweet was if the headline newspapers today said, Elton John, turns out I'm into tits. Anyway, Let's see how he responded, conversely, to a bunch of white working class people getting very, very angry, understandably so, when children got sliced and diced by a man that was born abroad and whose parents were imported, as usual, by an incompetent British government that stopped vetting people in the 1990s for reasons. The people of Southport are reeling after the horror inflicted on them yesterday. They deserve our support and respect. Those who have hijacked the vigil for the victims with violence and thuggery have insulted the community as it grieves. They will feel the full force of the law. So is it sinking in yet? Is it sinking in? When he's talking about you, dear listeners, he's happy to use words like horror inflicted on them, hijacked the vigil, violence, thuggery, the full force of the law. But 24 hours later, when a Rwandan knife man was getting stabby, we got horrendous and shocking news. Yeah, heavy rain did this. Thank the police, I'm being kept updated. No mention of violence, thuggery, the full force of the law. None of that. So what's the root cause of, well, the inevitable? Thugs hijacked Southport and families' grief. I utterly condemn the actions of these mindless and violent thugs. They will be brought to justice for their actions. Sickening. Didn't get rhetoric like that when they were talking about the Rwandan fella, did you? Didn't hear anything like that. Then you just got thoughts and prayers. Imagine on a piano. I'm being kept abridged of these awful events. Tragedy. Nobody talking about savagery, brutality. Nothing like that. Yvette Cooper, exactly the same. Right, the video on the left that'll play is the response of the Home Secretary when foreigners were rioting in Hare Hills.
Officers and also local community leaders about the action they're now taking in response to those unacceptable scenes of disorder and criminality that we saw last night. The community is working very closely together in response to what was a local child protection incident, but it's really important that the community can feel safe on the streets and also that the perpetrators feel the full force of the law.
The community. It's important that we talk to the community, yes. Maybe the community can self-police, because you can't expect my officers to do anything about it, can you? Now let's listen to her when she's talking about, well, people like you filthy, rough-handed working-class scum.
To now see those same police facing violent attacks from thugs on the streets who have no respect for a grieving community, it's a total disgrace. Frankly, this is a time when everyone should be showing respect for a community and for the police.
Demon headmaster there, innit? Thugs, scum. Total thugs, no respect. Didn't say anything like that when some Roma types were doing it, did you? No, then it was like, can we just get the community to sort it out? Yeah, cheers then. A nice polite request. You couldn't make this stuff up. So, as usual, I'll sum up with a root cause analysis, shall I? The root cause of this issue, if you really get down to it, remains the mass importation of low-quality immigrants. Don't forget, Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair told us that they sent out search parties to find people to bring over. This started in the 90s. We started massively importing people. And when I was at Ben in the 80s, you got like doctors and lawyers and surgeons and engineers from abroad. And in the 90s, we just started going, empty the villages. What's that, an illiterate hill tribesman with a shovel? Yeah, we'll give him a job. Send him to Aberdeen. Lunacy. Middle-class arseholes don't do things like what happened in Southport the other day. Salman Abedi wasn't the son of engineers and surgeons. He was the son of Libyan criminal degenerates who fled the Gaddafi regime and then were given a council house and fed and clothed by you for 20 years before they scattered a few children across the walls of the Manchester Evening News Arena. If we had the same standards that we did in the 1980s, none of this would have happened. And the Manchester Evening News Arena wouldn't have happened, and Borough Market wouldn't have happened, and London Bridge wouldn't have happened, and Emily Jones wouldn't have happened, and Lee Rigby wouldn't have happened. None of it would have happened because none of those people were injured by people born and raised in Yorkshire and whose parents were born and raised in Yorkshire. This isn't complicated, but as I keep telling you, our leaders globally are in the grip of a toxic ideology that puts identity before anything else, so they won't fix it. And as I keep telling you, black pill doomsayer that I am, buckle up, because it's going to get worse. Every year, Europe imports another 10 million poorly educated, unvetted, scary, hairy men. So this isn't going to stop. As I keep telling you, it's going to be the plot of Starship Troopers. Every year it's going to get more commonplace, and you are going to end up with full-blown sectarian violence and, well, the total collapse of society. So, nice one. Make sure you buy plenty of food, plenty of legal weaponry, and a big cast iron chastity belt for your wives and daughters. Because if you don't, they're not going to have a fun time come 2028. Trust me. If your missus goes for a short stroll through Leeds without a cast iron knickers on, she's going to end up with a gusset like a yawning hippopotamus. So just do your due diligence, strap yourself in, and get ready for a rip-roaring 2025, alright? But that's just my thoughts. Please let me know in the comments if you think everything's going to be fine and dandy. It's all going to go totally great, just like the likes of Alistair Campbell and Peter Mandelson said. And, you know, in a couple of years' time, you'll get a barely literate Rwandan asylum seeker, and he'll jump off the plane and be like, "You do not know the way." And then the second he walks through a subway in England, because his feet have touched our fertile soil, he comes out the other side and he's wearing a tweed suit and a bowler hat, and he's like, "Jolly good show, chaps. Pip, pip, I'm off for a game of croquet." If you think that's the way it's going to go, let me know in the comments so I can point at you and laugh. All right? Thanks for tuning in. See you all very soon. Toodle pip. Cheers.